Hello, I am your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here for another episode of ADHD for Smartass Women. You know that my purpose is always to show you who you are and then inspire you to be it. In the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I've never met a one that wasn't truly brilliant at something, not one. So, of course, I am just delighted to introduce you to Meg Hennessey Schofield. Meg Hennessey Schofield is a special educator, mindfulness teacher, and co creator of the SMYLE program, which blends sensory based yoga with trauma informed education to help neurodivergent learners thrive. With a master's in severe special education and more than a decade in the classroom, she is known for creating safe, sensory friendly spaces where students with moderate to severe disabilities can learn, grow, and feel seen. A former Division I athlete and high achieving student at Boston College, Meg had spent years masking, pushing through anxiety, perfectionism, and postpartum depression before discovering the power of nervous system regulation and mindfulness. A passionate yogi with training and workshops from Kripalu to Cambodia and Thailand, Meg brings a global perspective to nervous system regulation and self-awareness. As co-creator and director of SMYLE, she equips kids and young adults with the tools to quiet their minds, build self-trust, and fully engage in learning and life. When she's not teaching, you'll find her on a spontaneous dance break, exploring the outdoors, or leaning into what she calls ADHD o'clock, always rushing, yet somehow delivering last-minute magic. Meg lives on a bustling farm with her husband, daughter, dog, and chickens, embracing the joyful chaos and encouraging others to find healing through authenticity. Welcome, Meg. Did I get all of that right?
Yes, thank you so much, Tracy, for having me. It feels surreal to hear you say all that back. And it's like you've made such an impact in my life. Yeah.
Can we talk about your ADHD diagnoses first? I always like for our listeners to connect with you and hear what your story is. So, can you tell us what are the circumstances around your diagnoses?
So I was actually diagnosed in my early 20s, but it was also a diagnosis with anxiety and depression. And I didn't really pay attention to the ADHD diagnosis because I was like, ugh, everyone has a little ADHD. And I just kind of pushed it aside because the anxiety and the depression were really like so much louder and intrusive in every instance of my life. So I just kept going with what I did always, pushed harder, masked more, overcompensated. And then all the times I would struggle, I just thought they were personal failings. And so then I'd start, like beating myself up. And it was just this constant cycle. And then it wasn't until like this past year when I became a mom and I, had some postpartum struggles, as many do, but I have an incredible care team, which I'm so thankful for. And my provider recommended, like, hey, maybe we look more into this ADHD piece, and why don't we try you on a medicine? And I didn't really want to do that, but I was so not myself in every way that I was literally open to trying anything. And Tracy, I never will forget this. It was like 2 hours after taking it, I, walked by a mirror and I saw myself, and it was like, "Hello." Like, I hadn't seen me in so long, and it was like all of the busyness in my brain, like, went calm, and I wasn't just, like, giving a checklist of everything I was failing or I was behind on. It was, "Oh, here's my beautiful daughter. I live in this beautiful house with my supportive husband." And it was just like, it was just a reality check in the best way. And it really changed my life. It saved my life, actually. When that happened, I was like, wow, like maybe I really should Like you always say, the research, like to figure out. I love doing research, and I got super hyper focused then on ADHD, and that's how I discovered your podcast. And it's been like therapy for me.
I love hearing that.
Yeah,
You're in your early 20s and you get diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and ADHD. But it sounds like all at the same time, but no one sits you down and says, it could be that they're comorbid, that you have all three of them. But it also could be that it is the ADHD that is causing the anxiety and the depression. No one told you that. So it was kind of like, oh, that's the third wheel. I'm not even going to worry about that. We'll focus on the other two.
exactly. Yeah. And then it wasn't until this provider, she was the one that kind of was like, I think it's all connected.
Okay. So I'm sure there are listeners who are saying, okay, what did you take? What was the medication?
It was Adderall, the first, but then I went through a process of, figuring out the right one because Adderall, like you said in your experience, it just increased my anxiety.
So originally, when you took it, it calmed all the noise down. But then over time, it started to go back up again.
Yes. And also the crashes with Adderall just were awful. And I got to the point where I was supposed to be taking like small doses 3 times a day, and it just was, how am I going to manage that with work and a kid? So my provider recommended Vyvanse. And but the problem was with Vyvanse is the adult dose was too much for me because I am very like susceptible. So a kid dose just came out recently, and
Oh, really? I should try that.
yes, and it has been a game changer.
The noise. And isn't that so frustrating when you take it the first time and it totally works? And then progressively it starts not working again and making, creating other symptoms.
Exactly.
I've been there so many times. I'm just, you just kind of give up. So the Vyvanse kid dose, I have not heard this. The one thing I will say, it almost never fails when I talk to a woman who has had success with medication and I ask her, what medication are you taking? It's more often than not Vyvanse. That is the one that seems to work best for women. Anecdotally, in my experience, from what women tell me.
It doesn't like Adderall made me feel like I was like on something, like which it didn't feel like me. But Vyvanse, it just allows me to access what I need to access, stay calm, prioritize. It helps me do all the things I struggle with, but without all the backlash that the other ones provide.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's because it doesn't just all dump into your system at one time, right? It's
Prolonged throughout the day.
exactly. That is fascinating. Okay, I'm going to go take a look at Vyvanse. So,
Yes, the kid dose.
you're on the right medication. It's reliable. What has that changed?
I only could focus. This was my whole life. Last minute. I waited to the last minute for everything, whether that was packing for a trip. I almost drove my mom and my husband crazy over the years because, like you had said, I think in your book, like the morning before your flight, like going through the closet, and then I don't pack correctly because it's kind of a
Forget
half
things.
job. I forget things. I brought too many of one thing, or like for me with teaching with special ed, it's the progress notes, it's the 3-year evaluations, and they would cause me so much anxiety. And if I tried to sit down 2, 3 weeks in advance and write it, my brain wouldn't work. It like wouldn't come on. And it would drive me crazy because I was like, no, I'm doing all the right things. I'm starting in advance. I'm trying to break it down, but it just wouldn't come online. So I needed that adrenaline and that stress, that last minute the night before hyper focus. And that's really the only time I was able to do my best work. But then I always had two results. Like if it got finished, I would be happy that it was done, and then I'd be depleted for days because it just fried my nervous system. Or if I didn't complete it, or didn't complete it to the level that my perfectionist standards are, I would just spiral into this deep depression. I lived like that for years. So it was brutal.
What were you like as a child, Meg?
I was thinking that you would ask that, and I'm trying to think back, and I definitely was very endless energy, big personality, but in my head, 14 things are going on at once, like we said, like so many tabs open, but that was just in my head. But to everyone else, they always say, I was calm, collected, I was driven, but they didn't know what was going on to get me to look like that, like all the masking that I was doing. There's this metaphor. Have you ever heard the duck metaphor? On the surface, the duck looks super calm, but underwater, like
I used Swan.
that is me without my medicine and just constantly jumping from one thing to the other. And
Were you a good student?
I was, but again, my grades said I was because I would cram and I would, pass the test, but I didn't retain anything. And when I would cram, it was because I actually had to like reteach myself all the information because I couldn't focus during the class. I was more focused on all the subtle energy shifts in the classroom, the tone of voice of the teacher. If he had a stain on his shirt, I couldn't stop looking at that and like wondering what happened to him before class. If I was in a fight with a friend, I couldn't stop thinking about that. And then all of a sudden, class would be over and I'd have no idea what happened.
Were you diagnosed with inattentive or combined type?
Yeah, I think it's combined because if I don't work out, then it's like times 10. So it's not that I can't sit still in the class. It's, I need to get that energy out at some point. And I mean, that's why swimming my whole life was my saving grace. Yeah,
That's what got you through school.
right. The structure, swimming 3 to 4 miles a day. Yep.
And so when you were swimming, is that when your brain would calm down?
Yes. There was no sound underwater except my breathing, so it was very meditative. Pushing myself to the limit every practice, like it was how I could get out my frustration and also regulate everything all at the same time. But it also was a double-edged sword because swimming is very personal. So you're fighting against your time. It really like made my perfectionism
Oh.
like skyrocket. And if I didn't get the perfect best time every race, all this pressure I'd put on myself, I'd consider myself a failure.
So it was while you were swimming, it was meditative, it was calming. But then once you got out and you looked at the time, then that's when you would start beating yourself up if it wasn't perfect, basically.
Yes, it was like the practices were the meditative part for sure, but it was the competition piece.
How long did you swim for? When did you stop? Did you go to college as a swimmer?
I did, yeah. I swam through college. And then I actually quit my senior year for teaching because I couldn't really do the teaching practicums with the sport. But I went back actually and did a fifth year as a grad student. So I did get all my 4 years. So I didn't stop until I was 21, which is when my diagnosis came.
So literally, your diagnoses came shortly after you quitting swimming.
Yes.
And that makes so much sense, right?
Yeah. My world collapsed.
Well, we know that, I mean, even if you do 20 minutes of exercise at 70% of your high heart rate, that is comparable to a dose of Adderall and Prozac. So for the ADHD, which I think is the anxiety and depression. And so you were literally self medicating with swimming. What a great thing to self medicate with, too, right?
Yeah.
And the minute you stopped, that's when everything fell apart. But we don't know that. I mean, you're probably thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. How can everyone else do this? What's wrong with me? Yeah. In every area of my life, it just started crumbling. And then, I wasn't getting the physical fitness either, so I started gaining weight.
Oh
And so
gosh,
then my
yes.
self-image issues, it all just compounded.
I think also with weight, it fogs your brain up and I just don't feel good. And it's not about I mean, sure, part of it's vanity, but when I eat too much, everything slows down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to talk now, if it's okay, about your SMYLE program. And basically, if we can come in from a different angle, first of all, I do want to say I've never heard of a master's in severe special education. And I'm curious, what made you choose that?
At Boston College, they actually have a special needs school on campus. And I remember seeing all the students. It was kind of a half hospital, half school. And I was like attracted to the students. I'm always very drawn to individuals with disabilities. And I creepily followed them into the building one day. I'm like, where are they all going? And then I discovered this school, and it was a school for severe disabilities. I think now it's phrased high need support of disabilities. And so they said if I was interested in this, because I was studying elementary education, that I could work at the school and get my degree in severe special ed, and they would help me pay for it. I stumbled into it, and it changed the course of my life.
In what way?
I remember as an elementary teacher, I liked it. I love kids, but it just didn't feel like, and not enough isn't the right word, but it wasn't right. And then when I worked with these students, it was like this is what I'm meant to do.
So could the word actually be it wasn't enough? It wasn't intense enough. It wasn't important enough. It wasn't, all of that?
Yeah, that could exactly be it.
Like you knew kind of doing the blah, 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 you're going to be bored.
Right? That's I never thought of it like that, but yeah.
And maybe it wasn't meaningful enough too. The ability you have to really make a difference wasn't enough.
Yeah. And these students, they taught me so much about life and just like not taking things for granted. Like they have so many complications out of their control, and they're so happy and positive and yeah, and every day, I'd come into work and I'd leave just like my cup was full.
And you don't always hear teachers saying that.
Yeah.
So I am curious if you can remember a specific moment in the classroom when you realized, oh my gosh, this is about regulation first, not academics, that regulation is really the starting point for learning.
It actually started when I was really struggling with my anxiety and depression. And I was bringing that with me into school. And I'd have, hard meetings, difficult parent conversations. I'd feel a lot of pressure from the outside. So I started making like subtle changes in my classroom to help me. And then it just was like unbelievably effective for my students. And all of a sudden, other teachers that we would switch classes with, or tutors, or parents started reaching out and saying, "What are you doing? Something has changed, but don't stop what you're doing because it's working." And I will never forget, that's when my coworker actually, who I started the SMYLE program with, she's an occupational therapist. She actually came into my classroom to work with my students, and she's like, Meg, you're onto something. This is, look, like these students haven't been able to access this part of their brain since I've worked with them for years. And we're able to get so much more day in and day out because we're starting with regulation, and not just with how I'm approaching them, but the environment as well. That's the big key.
So, what does that look like when you have a classroom and You're teaching and you're starting with regulation.
Yeah. So all demands are put on hold. I mean, it depends on each school and the schedule, but in my classroom, I'm in a sub-separate classroom, and I do not start anything of high demand until at least a half hour into the day. And what I do is, you know, I have a coffee cup analogy, right? Like everybody comes in with their own coffee cup, different temperatures, different levels. Some are bubbling, some are sloshing, some of the cups are empty and leaking, and they all come into my class, and I always have this safety for them, this buffer. And they know that when they come in, it's always the same every morning. They greet me, they greet their friends and teachers, they put away their stuff, turn in their homework, and then they relax until it's time for group mindfulness. Oh, I'm sorry, I have them go over their schedule just to make sure if there's any changes in their day, they're aware of it right from the get-go. And then we do group mindfulness, and that's about 20 minutes. And what I do is we start off with deep breathing because it's unbelievable when you connect your breath and your mind, they come in all in their heads and bringing them back to their bodies. And then we usually do some movement, and there's always choice. It's, do you want to do some yoga with me? And I run a yoga group, or do you want to go on a treadmill or a bike? Whatever it is that feels right for you in that moment. We do like 10 to 15 minutes of that. And then I end with a guided meditation, either one that I read aloud or I love calm.com. They have so many great ones. And it's usually when I sense the students that come in, I can sense it's that intuition that we have. I can pick up on what's bothering them, and then I usually try to pick a meditation to meet that point, like calm your worries, or um, work with your anger, or build up your energy based on like what I'm picking up on. And then I kind of use that as the catalyst for the rest of our day.
So you have basically set up a system that totally works for you so that you can give your best work to them, right? Or your best self to them. It calms you, it calms your nervous system, and it does the same thing for your students. So you're all starting out together at a base that is so much more, when you're there, you're so much more capable of learning.
Right, right. I like to say they digested the coffee in their cup, and now there's room for more to come in. And it's not just the students, it's me, it's my assistants as well.
Everybody.
Yeah, because it's contagious. We've all worked with someone who brings that nervous energy, and they pick up on it even more sometimes than we do, because they tend to be more sensitive. So if we're calm and we're grounded, it just rubs off on them.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you don't know where they're coming from, right? You don't know what their home environment, like what they've had to deal with in that morning.
Exactly. And a lot of my students can't verbally communicate.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of what they are able to communicate is through behaviors or through gestures. So it's really just picking up on those subtle cues.
Tell us, Meg, what's actually happening in the brain and body when we're under chronic stress, and how does that impact learning, focus, and emotional regulation?
When the brain's under chronic stress, whether that's from trauma, unpredictable environment, or just the constant demands of living with a disability, it's almost like a smoke alarm is just constantly going off in their brains, and it won't turn off. Before I get more into the chronic stress, I want to state that not all stress is bad, right?
Right.
There's three types of stress. Before this interview, I had the butterflies, right? It helps you focus and show your best work. But then there's the tolerable stress, which is, I like to, it's like a yellow, a caution. That's more of the, you lost a family member, you moved. It's those those experiences that are hard and overwhelming, but if they're buffered with strong support, stable environments, then you're able to recover. But when it's toxic, which is what we are talking about in our book, in our program, it's that frequent, prolonged, and stress that it's almost like the smoke alarm's off, but also the thermostat's pumping high heat and it's not turning off. Adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones are just flooding the body, wreaking havoc on the emotional regulation, executive functioning, physical health. And all those parts that our students need to learn, to connect, to make smart decisions, they're offline. They can't even access them. And it's like asking a kid with foggy glasses to read a sentence. You can't ask a kid with a dysregulated brain to learn. It's not going to work. And then those with ADHD and other severe disabilities, it just like intensifies all of that sensitivity. So things are louder, sensory input, things are brighter. Social cues to others that are fine are extremely overwhelming to them. And then if you add in an unexpected change in their schedule or if someone's out, whew, things go totally off the rails. So they're just constantly living in that fight or flight or freeze. So it's really hard to even try to teach them when they're in that state.
So let's say you have a child and you just notice first off in the morning that that child is in nervous system dysregulation. What do you do in that moment to help them? Stop the spiraling up and maybe just try to calm it down.
So what I do is I set up my classroom to have all of these subtle nervous system buffers. So the lights are dimmed. There's always relaxing background music on with no words, just to kind of drown out any sounds in the hallways, but also drown out those nervous thoughts in the brain. And, I speak to them in a very slow, calm manner, sometimes even quiet, because if they come in and they're very amped up, they'll be kind of yelling or height, and I model where I want them to be. And then I kind of just let them settle in. And because my setting and my routines and my expectations are always the same, they'll usually go for what they need. Whether that's I have a bunch of sensory corners all throughout the room with like Yoga Boo bean bags, weighted blankets, every fidget you could imagine of all different sensory input, and they'll grab which one they need. And I'll just kind of let them settle in. And then I'll say, when you're ready, we're doing our mindfulness, and they'll join when they're ready, but some might not even be able to join. And that's okay. But usually they don't join in the beginning, but halfway through, they'll start making their way over towards us. And they are picking up on the energy that we're all feeling. And even if they can't participate, they're there in their own way that they can be.
So a child is never forced to get with the program. And if they are dysregulated, they go get themselves regulated before they come over. I mean, are they? And I would think that they're probably not allowed to come. I mean, if they're dysregulated, you don't want them around with the kids that are regulated and want to learn, right? Or are capable of learning.
Yes, yes. If it is a safety concern, for sure. And I'll kind of I always usually have two assistants with me, and I'll kind of give them a look, and we'll all be on the same page. And one of them will kind of just float around them, and be that buffer that they need, but also really just be that grounding force that you're okay. What you're feeling is okay to feel that. And then, like, working with them through it so that they're able to come out and then go on with their day. But I've had students that they don't even get to go on with their day because they're so dysregulated when they come in that even by the time the day's over, some of them are still dysregulated. But, when they come in the next day, I am the exact same way I always am. I never hold grudges. Oh, you had a hard day yesterday. I'm nervous about you. No. I am always stable. I am always welcoming. Again, because that's what they rely on. They need that safety, that emotional support.
Can you imagine if all of our schools were run like this for all kids? How much better our education system would be, instead of everything being so punitive and this question kind of goes along with it. You hear about parents and teachers talking about kids acting out. And I'm thinking of, having your nervous system dysregulated. And isn't acting that phrase acting out, isn't that basically just nervous system dysregulation?
Right? I view that. So in special ed, we always say we look at every behavior as a form of communication. What is the function behind that behavior? And that example you just gave, my thought is their nervous system is yelling, I feel unsafe.
Mhm. Mhm.
I need help.
Yeah.
And the worst thing to do would be to bring out the paddle, put them in detention, isolate
Shame
them.
them.
No, right. No, no, that's the opposite. And that was so often what I felt like, right? Like in school, like not able to survive and just constantly in dysregulation. Ugh. And it's just then you don't learn. And then days go by, years go by, and when people are like, "Oh, that was a great lesson in bio, and we learned this," I still have no idea about bio because I would be in total dysregulation. But that's just I can't learn like that. I can't learn sitting.
And how many kids go through that, And actually, I am totally not against medication. Hey, if it works for you, great. But that the study, and I don't know how many years ago it was, but it wasn't too long ago, where they looked at kids with ADHD, and they gave, I think it was half the kids Adderall and half the kids they didn't. And the kids for the first year or two actually did better. But then at the end of the 3 years, they tested both sets of kids and they realized that the kids on Adderall actually didn't learn anything. They didn't learn any more than the kids that weren't on medication. Yeah. Which is like, what if we change the system so we actually allow these kids to learn the things that they're interested in since they have brains of interest, right?
Exactly. Yes.
But it's the
Yes.
school system that goes wide instead of deep, and we have the sense that we have to know a little bit about everything, which why?
Right. And also when I think you've mentioned this in the past, but when there's no clear direction of what the lesson is about, then individuals with ADHD, it's like, I have what's the purpose of this? Like, how is this going to help me? Yes, how is this going to help me in life? That's why teaching training was actually the time I learned the best because I'm like, actually with the kids, hands on, moving around, seeing a kid have a meltdown and helping them in the moment, like that tangible and practical experience is what I think we need more options for kids.
And are there people that teach, that have degrees like you in severe disabilities? Are there teachers who don't teach the way you do? They don't care about nervous system regulation. It's just basically get them in, and everybody's doing the same thing. And if you misbehave, you're out. Is it punitive? Or do all special needs teachers teach like you?
I wish all did, not, but I think more and more are becoming aware. And we're definitely moving out of that strict behavioral focused. You have to be on a behavior plan with reinforcements. And I do think there is a time and place for that, but I think it needs to be in conjunction with regulation. Because once the student is motivated, that's what, getting the motivator to help them overcome a challenging behavior, you know, mixed in with learning all these tools to help them self-regulate, that's what's going to take them farther in life than just strict behavior training in and out.
Oh my gosh. we all knew how to emotionally regulate.
Oh, I wish I took that class in school, right?
Can you just imagine how much better life would be? Speaking of that, so I know that you're all about reconnecting the body and the mind. What does that mean? Why? And what are some simple everyday ways that we can start building that connection?
So often when individuals are dysregulated, they're just stuck in the spiral of their thoughts. And you'll see this, they either are like in hypervigilance where they're like on total alert all the time and they can't focus, or they're dissociated where they're just not even there, they're shut down. And actually with both of them, they're knocking things over, right? Because they don't know where their body is in space. Um, and it's just they're basically disconnected from their bodies. So by bringing the connection back, I think it's called the body mind. I can't remember the individual who coined that, but I love that because they are one being. And when they're connected, energy flows, things move, and you start to get grounded in your body and you're able to calm down that smoke alarm, that turn off the thermostat and bring yourself back into the present moment so that you're able to take stuff in instead of just rejecting and pushing it all away. So, some things that we do through our SMYLE program is every yoga form that we do is all has a sensory component um, in it. So, whether that's, the tactile, that deep touch pressure, or vestibular input, similar to what you get on a swing, that's very calming. And what we do is we read the student where they are in that moment, and then we have specific forms that we do with them to bring them back to that window of tolerance where they're able to function at their best.
So tell us, what exactly is the SMILE program?
Yes, so it's a sensory and mindfulness-based yoga for learning environments. And what it is that coworker that I mentioned that came into my classroom one day and was like, "You're on to something." She is brilliant, and she's written a couple books on war veterans and trauma. And so she and I got together, and she's like, "I think we should do something for kids." And I started all this research. So then we went on this research for 7 years. And yes, it was a labor of love, but basically like figuring out, okay, how do we take all of this information, the physiology, the psychology, biology, emotional, everything, and combine it into a way that teachers are able to like implement it into their classrooms, right? Because when students are not at home, majority of their life is at school. So if we can incorporate these programs in, I like to say like pepper them throughout the day, right? Have them in the morning. During a lesson, you pause, you take some deep breaths. Before going to the next class, you have a mindful transition. We might listen to some more calming music, do some exercises, but just pepper it throughout the day so we're constantly regulating. It's not just in the beginning or just at the end. It's throughout the whole day. And that's what we've come up with. And we train not not only yoga teachers, but also regular teachers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, counselors, parents, anyone who's interested. And it's bringing that knowledge about nervous system regulation and these tools that we've had success with in my students, in my classes, and the patients that my co-author worked with. And we just make it more tangible and easy to implement.
So did you give us some simple everyday ways to build that mind body connection if you feel like you're dysregulated?
Yeah, so I'm sorry if I didn't, but it would be the deep breathing. I think that's the best way is through your breath. It's like a direct channel to the parasympathetic nervous system. So we have all these, I'm all about visuals. And so I have all these visuals of combining movement with breath. And so that you're connecting your body. Like there's this one that we do, it's called the Robin's breath, where you have your hands on your shoulders and you breathing in and then breathing out. So you're not, because students often can't feel their breath in their body, especially if they're dysregulated. So adding that movement kind of intensifies the feeling and makes them really connect more to their body and their breath.
Do we have anything more to say about SMYLE?
We do a workshop where we're training our professionals. It's 25 hours. And I actually made it, I brought it up to my co-author this year to make it more ADHD friendly. The beginning is all about the science and it's pretty dense. And so we pre-recorded it so that individuals can do it at their own pace. And like me, you can rewind many times when things don't make sense. And if one episode takes you, you know, long, that's okay. Go at your own pace. Let it all settle in because that's also the other thing is we have to be at our own speed when we're learning because if it's too fast or too much, you're not getting it all.
Yeah. Or too slow, right? I'm like, "Oh my god, speed that voice up."
Yes, yes, yes.
So, Meg, if you could go back and give young Meg one piece of advice about ADHD, stress, self worth, anything, what would it be? What do you think the most important advice you could give her would be?
I would tell her you're not broken and you're not too much because everyone always said I was too much and you're not too sensitive, right? Those are actually your greatest strengths and use them as your compass. Because when I really start to listen to those parts of me, that's when I discover more of the real me. And, that's how I discovered your podcast and, diving into this work and just also not letting the noise from everything else change your view of the world. Um, just follow your intuition and trust that the people that love you and that vibe with you, they'll stick around because they're the ones who actually are really pushing you forward.
The right people.
Right. Yes.
So, do you have a number one ADHD workaround?
Yes. Auditory input for sure. When I'm doing a project, I listen to like binaural beats in my ear or like yeah, no words, but that I've like trained my brain that that's my focus sound. So yeah, once they go in, I'm focused. And then also when I'm doing like chores around the house, listening to audiobooks or podcasts like yours that I totally forget that I'm doing the task that I don't want to do because I'm just totally entranced in what I'm listening to.
Okay, so you've given two things now where at the beginning you said you just, before the medication, that you just could not get anything done except at the last minute. So have you now worked out some strategies that actually work? Because the binaural beats, it sounds like what you're saying is when you really want to start something and you don't feel like it, you put it in and it's a signal to your brain that we're not screwing around, we're doing it.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I think that because when I would wait to the last minute, that would be like there's no I have no other option. I gotta put these in and I just gotta focus. And so I kind of used that when I wasn't able to have medication, and that was what worked. And so now, like combining them with me on medication is I am so much more productive.
Well, and I think you've trained your brain now. So Yeah, the medication. My son was on Vyvanse, and he was only on Vyvanse for a couple months. And I remember the way I found out is I asked him, he said something to me about, oh, I just wrote a 17-page paper. And I'm like, what? This was in college. You couldn't write a one-page paper. How did you write a 17-page paper? He's like, oh, I can totally do it now. I'm talking to him and he's like, oh, well, yeah, my friend has Vyvanse. And I'm like, Marcus, you cannot go taking other kids' Vyvanse. You can get your own. You have ADHD. You can get a prescription. So he got a prescription, but he was only on it for 3 months. One day he just said, oh, I don't take that anymore. And I'm like, well, why? And he said, because I know what I'm supposed to do now. So that allowed him to figure out what strategies actually work for him. So then once he understood the strategy, the system, the structure, he was like, I don't need it anymore, which was fascinating to me.
That is fascinating. I mean, it makes total sense because you're regulated and then you're able to, access tools that when you were dysregulated, you weren't able to.
So maybe that's what the medication does first and foremost for people that it works for is it regulates you. Shuts off all the noise and the anxiety and yeah. So, Meg, where can people find you if they want to know more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so I actually am not on social media because I found it did not serve me well in many ways. So yeah, so much of my life is back in my control, and I'm way more present with my family and my friends. So I really would love if people just reached out to me through email. My email is meghensco@gmail.com. I also can be reached through the Sensory Enhanced Yoga website, the Sensory Enhanced Yoga Institute. And yeah, I'd love, this is definitely such an area that I'm compassionate about and really want to spread the word to more people and more educators that this is possible and like it's life-changing for these kids. So if more people want to connect and want to learn more about this and smile and hopefully help their students, I'd love it.
Yeah, and I think it can change any kid's life. It can change any adult's life, right? Once you understand, oh, this is about my nervous system. I mean, ultimately, that's what we teach is when you have a calm nervous system, you can do anything. When you're in all this negative emotion, you can't get out of bed. Wonderful. Okay, so we will make sure that all of this is in the show notes. Meg, thank you so much for spending time with us here today. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Oh, Tracy, it was a pleasure, and it's fulfilling a dream. Like I said, you're like a celebrity in my therapy. Oh, it's been amazing to be here.
Well, thank you again. So, if you like this episode with Meg, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week.